And welcome back to Sober Now. I'm Jim LaPierre. Hope you're having a good day. Today we're going to be talking about moving out of the problem and into the solution. It's some advice that my friends in AA dispense quite often, but I've found about 500,000 ways to apply it. And if you're anything like me, you're in a place where what's going on in the world seems like a little too much or a lot too much. You're in a place where maybe you're sick of reading about it, hearing about it, talking about it. Maybe you're doom scrolling through Facebook. Maybe you're struggling with where things are at politically, where things are at in terms of the pandemic, where things are at in terms of racial tension and insanity and things that are happening in the world. I care deeply about all of those issues, but what I experience on a regular basis is that it's a lot. It's an awful lot. And one of the things that I notice about people like me is that when things change or become more difficult or more trying, we don't necessarily adjust our expectations. We just keep doing what we do, and no matter what's going on around us, we expect that we should just be able to handle just about everything and do it really, really well, which is not reality. One of the very best addictions counselors I ever worked with is my friend Artis. And she would often say to people, you can always go back to step one, because no matter how good your program is, no matter how strong your recovery, no matter how good things are or how well you're handling them, every once in a while, things are going to happen in your life that you just couldn't have seen coming. They're not manageable, they're painful, they're things that stretch you way too thin. And when that happens, you should go back to step one, because it's going to offer you the opportunity to do a few things. It's going to offer you the opportunity to find ways in which you're powerless. It's going to give you the opportunity to surrender things that you're powerless over. It's all part of life on life's terms, which is if you're in a 12-step fellowship or familiar with their literature, then you know that concept makes perfect sense. It's right up there with one day at a time. It's right up there with keeping things simple. But quite often, things that I'm faced with or even forced or need to accept are things that I find unacceptable. And so I'm separating what do I have control over and what don't I? What am I powerless over? What do I need to trust that my higher power is going to take care of? I struggled with that for a lot of years. I woke up one day and realized that whether I trust a higher power to take care of things or not, I still can't do anything about the stuff I'm powerless over. So I literally have nothing to lose by trusting God to do what I cannot, or the universe, a higher power, whatever works for you. So what I notice lately in talking to people is that an awful lot of us are overwhelmed. An awful lot of us are stuck, whether in anxiety or depression. And I see folks trying to figure it out, trying to get it together. And I always remind them that the whole nature of being stuck is that you need help getting out. You need help making things better. If I could do it alone, then by definition, I wouldn't be stuck. I'm a person who needs a lot of help and support. I need all of the love that I can possibly gather into my life. And occasionally, despite my best efforts, I'm overwhelmed and things are too much. So the counseling skill that I'm going to talk about today is called fractionating. A counselor is probably the only person that would use that term. To fractionate means to simply break something down into smaller pieces. And we can do that with problems. We can also do that with goals. So if I have a long-term goal, I might break it down into a series of short-term goals and objectives and steps, basically, from where I am to where I want to be. Sometimes I talk with people who have amazing or lofty or huge goals. And that's cool, but I ask them to think long and hard about how they're going to measure their success. So the example I usually use is occasionally I meet with someone who tells me that they're going to lose 50 pounds, and that's the goal. And that's as far as they've broken it down. And I'll say to them, well, what if the goal was to lose 5 pounds? because that's pretty doable and that's pretty attainable and it won't take you forever. And then we could lose 5 more. The idea of doing things incrementally is really a common sense approach that we all know to use. And if we were supporting a friend or a family member, if we were helping somebody else to make change in their life, we would not approach them with something enormous without a lot of love and support and good application. But when we approach ourselves, we tend to do so in a fundamentally different way. So I want to break down that vision into steps. And the first thing that I'm going to ask myself is who can help me with this? The second thing I'm going to ask myself is who's going to be holding me accountable as I go through this process. I have learned over and over again that I, at times, will see it as acceptable to disappoint myself or let myself down. I have a very addictive brain that when I'm afraid to do something can conjure up 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't do it, why it would be wrong to do it, or irresponsible to do it. So I need to have people in my life holding me accountable, not only for encouragement and support, but also to ensure my follow through. A little break for coffee there. Please, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this, and always looking forward to answering your questions. What I want to focus on today is being able to accept everything that's going on in the world today, and then to consider what are your goals, what are the problems that you're facing, not that the world is facing. Certainly we all have investment in that, but what's going on in your life that needs to change? I get a strong sense in talking with folks that we need time to adjust whenever things change. We get stuck in the injustices and we get stuck in how things should be. We tend to be very critical of ourselves. So what I know about all of this is that having a healthy perspective is vital. And regaining it when we lose it is really the key. So if I'm moving out of the problem and into the solution, I'm grounded, I'm coping, I'm using support, I'm breaking down problems and goals until they're manageable, until they're steps that I can take, and I am viewing all of these things through a healthy perspective. And in order for me to do that, I need people weighing in. I'm always going to have blind spots, which are things that I can't see or I'm not willing to see. I'm always going to need folks who can challenge me. My experience is that even when I'm doing things well, if I am the only person monitoring or assessing my progress in overcoming these problems or achieving these goals, it's exhausting. I need people to support me along the way. Here's what I've found in terms of how my life has been going through the course of the pandemic. I have 3 kinds of days. Most days, I'm busy, and the truth is, I'm too busy. I do too much. I take on too much. But for the most part, things go fairly smooth, and I get to do a lot of stuff that I love, and that's my life most days. I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed. Some days, it's clear that my plans or whatever I thought was going to happen today are going to have to be a lot more flexible because it's just not working. My way doesn't work. And then on a small percentage of days, everything's just kind of fucked. And it's pretty clear that I need to let go of whatever my vision or my ideas were for today. And it's a reminder of my powerlessness. It's a reminder that my higher powers' plans work better than mine. But what I've learned over the years is that instead of fighting to hold on to my will or my plans, I can accept that those simply are not going to work. I can endeavor to be more flexible. And I can also accept that some days it just seems like nothing works. Now, the good thing is that list of 3 that I just gave you are in order of how often they happen. And that's a product of my own recovery. That's a product of a lot of therapy. Because it used to be that list was flipped up the other way. So most days are good. When things are not going my way, I can very readily become annoyed, I can very readily become impatient, and I can very easily lose perspective. And I'm going to share with you a story today by Robert Fulghum. Robert Fulghum was famous for writing the book Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Fulghum was actually a Unitarian minister who had some pretty great ideas about spirituality. But he related a story from when he was a young man. Uh, he had kind of a dead end job. He was working at a was pretty annoyed with a young Robert Fulghum. And he listened to Robert complain about the work conditions, complain about the food, complain about how dissatisfied he was with so many things about the job. And he ended up lecturing Robert Fulghum, and said to him, "You need to learn the difference between an inconvenience and a problem." And it really shook me the first time I heard that, because the expression "don't sweat the small stuff" came to mind. It made me realize that so much of what I manage to get really stressed or overwhelmed by is stuff that in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. And so I need those reality checks. I need those reminders of what's really important in my life. I need to notice that the minor mishaps and things that don't go my way in the grand scheme of things are not terribly important. And on my good days, I know that. On my good days, I never sweat the small stuff. I just say, well, we're going to have to adjust. Sometimes I think that what life is primarily is an ongoing series of adjustments. But I come back to life on life's terms. And man, when I look at what 2020 has been, those terms are pretty brutal. Those terms are rough. And as difficult as they've been, I think what weighs on us all the more is that we don't know necessarily when they're going to get better, when they're going to change. We don't know what's necessarily going to happen next with the pandemic. We don't know when there'll be a vaccine. We don't know necessarily what's going to happen from day to day. But of course, I don't know that on any other day either. It's just that in 2020, I'm looking at the unknowns in terms of things that scare me, in terms of things that concern me. And I know that we're all very focused on the pandemic, but I think, more so focused on the epidemics that are continuing to occur within the context of the pandemic. I'm very concerned about the increase in overdose rates nationally. I'm very concerned about everything that I'm hearing anecdotally from people in recovery about the how intense relapse is right now. I'm very concerned about how each of us are managing our mental health. And I remind folks that anxiety in our country was at an all-time high prior to the pandemic. And the rates of suicide have increased, the rates of domestic violence have increased, the rates of essentially everything that harms us have increased. And so I consider it a personal responsibility to take better care of myself so that I'm available to take care of others. I know that all of the systems in healthcare are overwhelmed and are going to be progressively overwhelmed. If you are even thinking about maybe you should get into treatment sometime, whether it's for substance use disorder, for mental health, for trauma recovery, for an eating disorder, for self-harm, I implore you, get on waiting lists now. The demand for mental health treatment and treatment for substance use disorder in the U.S. has risen dramatically, and every single indicator that we measure by data and everything that I hear anecdotally tells me that there's no question the demand is going to continue to increase at least through the end of this year. And it's not like we have more supply to draw from. We have a limited number of professionals and a limited number of programs. And It's one of the many, many reasons that my friend Martin and I created Sober Now, was to provide a very affordable and easily accessible online program that helps people get started in addiction recovery. It is a one-time purchase of $99. It is a 28-day program with a lot of great tools, and everything is not only done from home, it's done with complete confidentiality and utter anonymity. One of the reasons that we designed it this way was for my friends who work in law enforcement or the medical professions, folks who really can't afford to have a diagnosis on record or to have their anonymity breached. We've designed a program that allows you to access it literally without a name. You can make up a fake Google email account and just contact me through there, and everything that you need to get started on the path to recovery is in that one-time purchase, which gets you lifetime access to a lot of great content that we're creating. I want to encourage folks. I always like drawing attention to the free resources that we give away. If you go to YouTube in just a couple minutes and check out Sober Now's channel, you're going to find about 90 videos there on different topics relating to addiction recovery and mental health recovery, completely free. Giving this stuff away, hoping to further expand these conversations. We want to reach as many people as we can, because we know for a lot of folks, treatment is simply not affordable. It's not accessible. There's barriers to it in terms of transportation or childcare or whatever the case is. We just want to remove those barriers. So just please know that there's free resources and low-cost resources available to you. We also have a program for affected others, for folks like me who have loved ones in active addiction, and how it is that we cope and manage our lives in the midst of all of that. That too is a 28-day program that we'd love to have you check out. I'm going to pause just for a moment to look for questions or things that folks want to talk about today. Thank you, Marie Koval. It's true that we don't know what each day brings. I absolutely know that that's true, and it's one more reason to take it one day at a time. David, thank you. You know we can't control others. How do you handle others who are misleading others? It's very hard to bear witness to folks who are manipulating or deceiving. I totally get that. It's one more place where I have to check myself and say, okay, first of all, is it my responsibility? Is it my place to intervene here? The person that I want to share this with, are they willing to listen to me? Quite often, particularly in a lot of the institutions that I've worked in, there's this situation you run into where you're the one person who sees what's really going on and wants to tell those in power. And my experience is in a lot of different systems, if you're the only person saying, hey, there's a problem, sooner or later you become the problem. So if your goal is to support someone who's being manipulated or deceived, I would say it's fantastic that you want to share that with them, but ask yourself, are they willing to hear me? Am I going to potentially do some good here, or am I just going to be talking to someone who won't listen? It's a form of powerlessness that's painful, but I'm always trusting my gut to direct me as to what are people ready and willing to do. Marie, thank you again. Kind of working on standing up for me without getting angry and telling people to fuck off. With COVID-19 going into public is making me extremely anxious. Understandably, I think that's true for most of us. To be assertive and to set clear boundaries without being aggressive is a challenge in and of itself. I think for a lot of us, it is very challenging, first of all, to set boundaries because it is an act of self-protection. And my experience is we don't protect what we don't value. I think it is typically very uncomfortable for us to assert what our needs are, and to tell people how it is that we're feeling. Particularly going out in public these days is a lot more stressful than what we're used to, and being in the midst of maybe I'm going to contract a virus today, maybe I'm not, is obviously something that will really spike your anxiety. I think we need to maintain a healthy perspective. I'm going to follow CDC guidelines. I'm going to take good care of my health and my body. I'm going to do what I can reasonably do, and then I'm going to let go of it because that's realistically all I can do. It's kind of like driving. When I drive, I have to trust that everybody else on the road is going to do what they're supposed to do, stay in their lane, those kind of things. I think it's roughly the same with COVID. Obviously, I want everybody to wear a mask and use sanitizer and maintain social distance and do everything right. But I recognize that not everybody's going to do that. And I'm not going to be able to control that. So, one of the things that I remind folks about all the time is that fear makes us want control. And when things are going my way, I have a strong awareness that the only thing I need to be in control of is myself. And when I feel out of control, I can easily catch myself looking for ways to manipulate people, places, and things. And that is not who I want to be. I don't believe that that's what my higher power wants for me today. But it's all about keeping that perspective. And that is not something that I trust myself to do alone. I'm going to stay in good company. I'm going to maintain a connection to the people that my higher power puts in my path. I'm going to keep reaching out for help. And those things ensure a lot more manageability, a lot more sustainability, and they're just absolutely vital to me. So those are some of my experiences. Thank you so much, Marie and David, for your comments. They're greatly appreciated. I would love to hear from others of you, whether you have a moment now to write a quick question or email me. Jim@sobernow.com is a great way to connect with me. Would love to hear questions that you'd like to have answered. I'd love to hear topics that you'd like to see covered. Typically, I do about a 25-30 minute live stream here every Thursday. I'm very honored and excited to be broadcasting on Choose Help site and on a number of other sites across Facebook. Always, of course, encourage you to check out our site, sobernow.com. And feel free to connect with me on any form of social media. Jim LaPierre on Facebook and Instagram. Gonna start winding things up, but I hope that in the midst of these trying times that you're making some huge investments in your self-care. I hope that you're reaching out to others. And again, I can't implore you enough, and if you're thinking about going into treatment, if you're thinking about hiring a therapist, a counselor, any of those types of things, don't delay, do that now. Doing that now is probably going to involve a significant wait. Trying to do that a month from now, that wait will be much longer. So I'm just concerned about folks, and I want you to see that you're getting the help that you need. And if you're not sure where to start, if you're not sure what to even ask, email me. Be very happy to be a resource for you and help you get started. Please, again, take care. God bless, and we'll talk to you next week.